So hi there, Kerissa. It's a
Hello,
pleasure
Adri.
meeting you.
Thank you.
Uh, just want to say I've read through your whole website, went through your Instagram, talking with the owner of 1984 Farms, and you are doing fantastic work. I love your whole mission statement
Thank
and
you.
everything you're doing with the personal care products that are minimal ingredients to how you raise your animals to it seems like you incorporate a lot of your family time and family life with your farm and uh just having it be a whole family thing.
Yes, absolutely.
I love it. So, would you mind we'll start off, tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Me or the farm?
Let's start with you because
um,
I mean, you are the
yeah,
owner. So, how did you get into starting a farm?
it was a dream ever since I was a little girl. We always grew up rurally, and it was my dad's dream to be a farmer. That homestead life. We had horses, and he even had old school, like 1800s plow that he used our big horses with. And that kind of fueled my dream. My ancestors were farmers. My grandmother grew up on a farm in Utah, and that culture just always stuck out to me, and it's what I wanted for my family. And I grew up around ranchers and helped ranchers nearby, and it's just what I wanted. So um, when my husband and I met, the first night that we talked about all of our dreams and what we wanted. And his wasn't so much that he wanted a farm, as much as it was he just wanted to be self-sufficient, wanted to raise our own food. And those just kind of came together as we studied and learned and grew together, being introduced to gurus like Joel Salatin and Gabe Brown. So that's where it started for me. My dream, I had always hoped that I'd be on a horse every day of my life. But owning a business, that is a little bit different. I'm also a mother of six, and I homeschool all six of our kids. Here at the home, our farm is our kids' curriculum essentially. And I am an entrepreneur at heart, have been ever since I was young. I'd go buy candy bars and sit in front of my house in rural Utah, where like nobody drove by, but I sat out there with my candy bars to sell. And just always innovating and coming up with ideas. So yeah, that's just a little bit more about who I am, passionate about those things and helping other people. So
Yeah, that is, I understand you very well with the entrepreneurial spirit. And you mentioned Joel Salatin, big fan of his as well. He is who I initially learned about regenerative farming from and started to follow that practicing. And yeah, that is amazing, especially having grown up on that. But typically, most farmers don't employ regenerative agriculture and practices into their farms. What were you introduced to regenerative farming growing up, or is that something you learned later?
no, that's something we learned together later. We had um, I don't really, it came from watching. So a little bit more of my backstory is health issues. And I actually was plant based, almost vegan for about 15 years because of different digestive issues and things that I had going on. I was introduced to herbs, and it really helped me. And that direction took me down that plant based road. And I always thought it would be funny because I still believed in eating meat and raising the animals. It was still our plan. So I was going to call myself the vegan rancher because I still believed in it, just thought meat wasn't good for me. Um, that's a whole another dive. But so always very into nutrition and health and food. And so back in the day of Netflix and all the documentaries, we watched Fresh, I believe is what it was called. That was our first introduction to um, Joel Salatin. He was interviewed on there, and we just watched how he did things. And we just both knew we want to follow this guy's model. So that's when we dove into researching everything Joel Salatin, and we'd binge watch as a family. We'd binge watch YouTube videos and anything we could for about 4 years before we really actually even started officially farming.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I have not seen Fresh. This is the first time I'm hearing about it. I'm definitely going to have to go check it out. Uh,
Yeah, it came out about 12 years ago, I want to say. So
okay. That's probably around when I wasn't really I didn't know much about regenerative agriculture, so I'm gonna have to see if it's still on Netflix or figure out where to watch it.
yeah.
So you learned about regenerative agriculture, even though you grew up around like ranches prior to that.
Mhm.
What made you like, and you said nutrition has always been a big factor. What was it about regenerative agriculture that stood out uh, as opposed to how modern farming is now?
Honestly, it was the aesthetics of it. I grew up in the high desert where sagebrush grass wasn't readily available, uh, and management practices. Grass was always like really short. Pastures and things always looked dusty unless they were specifically hay fields that nobody ever grazed in. And so as we started to learn about regenerative agriculture, everything was green and it was beautiful. And like, so that image, first of all, is what was attractive, was that contrast of dirt and brown versus green and lush. And, as humans, we're very visually inspired. Beauty inspires us, makes us want to go towards something. Um, and that was initially what it was. And then um, truth is scalable. And so as we started to learn about how important the soil health was and how important soil health impacted those beautiful green fields, and then that nutrition impacting the health of the animals, like it just came full circle back to understanding humans' health, and how humans' health actually begins with the soil. The minerals and the nutrients in the food we eat is determined by the nutrients in the soil. So that just kind of full circle. It's a very holistic approach, and so one thing affects everything, and that is how we've always looked at our whole life, and so it just made sense. And
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I've never thought about it in that way, the aesthetics way, but I've lived in farm country for many, many years, and I would always drive past those empty fields that look like they were growing like just the brown beige wheat or whatever, but you'd never see anything out in them, nothing living ever grazing on them. And I always felt like that seems like a waste. All this land is just being used for basically nothing for most of the year. So
yeah.
I like your idea behind like it's more aesthetically pleasing, because that's what I think we want to see, is like that green, luscious earth, not the inhospitable beige.
Right. Well, and when you think about it, color color is life. you
Mhm.
know it's beautiful, it's vibrant, it's a high energy. It's um and when it's just dirt and brown, like, that looks like death. And so which are you more attracted to? And there's reasons why we're attracted to those colors and that vibrancy, and all of that, as far as ancestrally, with foods and different things like that, and what that means to us. So that was the first thing. I also, in managing my horses, I thought I was a genius, because I was like, I should rotate my horses through my fields. Like, I thought I came up with this on my own, to make the grass last longer. And I was trying to come up with all of these different ways to manage it. And then when I learned about regenerative agriculture and how it's the movement of the animals and moving them to different paddocks, I realized I wasn't that much of a genius, but it also helped me understand I was onto something, that there is truth to it. If it was something that, even just came to someone as simple as I am.
Mhm. Well, I mean, you're an entrepreneur and set up your own business and homeschool your kids. I don't know about simple, but you seem to be doing amazingly. And so I think we may have skipped over it because I'm so fascinated by your farm. But could you explain, like, what exactly is regenerative farming?
Yeah. Um, Regenerative farming is essentially where you focus on soil health. Um, it is about building and growing that soil ecology, because it produces the best grasses. It is better for the land. Going back to that death and life. Um, it's where you care for the land. If you care for the land, then the land cares for you back. It cares for your animals, and everything else just is a domino effect. And the other aspect of regenerative agriculture is that it's about it's natural, organic, the truest sense of those words, where we're not dumping in a bunch of synthetic chemicals. We are working as Mother Nature intended. There's a quote, Weston A. Price. He's his one of his best quotes is, and now I can't remember it except for the last part, is Mother Nature obeyed. That's like the biggest thing that sticks out is we work with nature, and we can help nature along in what it does on its own, without trying to come in and change it and do what we think is best. So we use natural resources and natural movement. So it goes back to um, more ancient days, where the buffalo grazed and they would stay in a place for a while and then they would move, and the wolves were a part of that movement, pushing the animals along. And the animals would go through and graze, and then they would leave and go into new pastures, versus just staying in that one spot forever. And it's a disturbance and rest cycle. I feel like I'm going all over the place. I'm trying to keep this in one spot because my brain just explodes, and I'm like, because it's so exciting.
No, this is excellent. I love everything you're saying. I also
Okay.
have the same thing, or I'll just kind of go off, but I love everything you're saying. Please continue.
Okay. All right. So the wolves help move those herbivores around, and then you have birds that naturally come in and live with herbivores. You see that in all your National Geographics, everything like that, that they follow along and clean up after the herbivores. And then your predators, your carnivores, follow and help that movement around. And what that does to the earth is it um, disturbs and then rests, like you're building a muscle. You disturb it when you're lifting weights or exercising, and then the healing, the rest is where that actually grows and develops. So that rest part is just as important, if not more important, than the disturbance part. So in farming, where we as humans, we and the fences take place of the wolves, where we are moving the animals around the pastures so that they can graze. And what this does is we get a more even grazing, where the cattle and the sheep, they go in and they eat everything versus one thing. What happens when an animal is in one place too long is they will graze only what they like the most. It's like putting a kid in a room, and you've got candy, and then you've got I mean, vegetables. I don't eat vegetables, but what most people would relate to. You got your candy and then and all your sweets and fun things, and then you have, your broth. What is the kid gonna go for? They're gonna go for the candy, and then they'll go back for the candy when they're done, and then the broth gets old and stale and doesn't do anybody any good. So that's what happens out in the fields. If a cow is in one place too long, she'll go through and she'll eat all the stuff that she prefers, and then it'll start to grow back a little bit, and it's really high in sugar at that point, and she'll go back and graze it more. But then what that does is it causes the plants that maybe she doesn't like as much to grow bigger. And if she keeps eating the short grass, it essentially kills it, and the weeds and the other things take over. And so then you have an imbalance there, and you create an imbalance in the soil. So our job is to put the animals out there, make sure that the space is just big enough that everybody has enough food, but that they graze evenly, that they eat everything, not just the stuff that they like, but the stuff that maybe they don't like as much. And then we move them. They've done that disturbance. And then we do follow up with pigs and chickens. We've actually found that our pastures do the absolute best with all three of the different animal types, not just cows and chickens. Pigs really do an amazing thing for pastures. But then the chickens come through, and they're the cleanup crew. They spread the manure, they eat all the bugs and the larvae, which keeps our pest load down for the cattle, and then we just follow that sequence around the property, and then the grass and the ground is able to absorb all the manure that was put down, and come back and start growing and grow even thicker. So that maybe I went too detailed, but that is essentially what regenerative agriculture is. And we at our farm, it means to us using not just natural principles for the soil health, but also on our animals. So we don't use any synthetic chemicals with our animals, and that's really important to us. We don't vaccinate, we don't use chemical wormers, we don't use antibiotics. There are times when a farmer, even Joel Salatin will talk about, I've had animals get sick and I've treated them, we will do that. If an animal gets sick, we will give antibiotics. We will do what we need to, because their life matters, and their health matters, and their quality of life matters. But if that happens, that tells us that we've mismanaged them, that's on us. It's not something blew in with the wind and got our animals sick. That comes down to us. And then we get to dive into, all right, where did we go wrong? What mistake did we make? Did we leave them here too long? Are their mineral supplements not good enough? So I'll let that is regenerative agriculture to us. So
Yeah, that is fantastic. Don't worry about diving too deep. I actually want to dive even deeper. There's a few things you mentioned I want to talk more about, but I just want to touch on the antibiotics, because I think that for so long, especially growing up, I'm in my 30s. I remember I was prescribed antibiotics all the time as a kid for any little thing I went into the doctors for. They're like, here's some antibiotics. And I feel like that is also kind of like what they do for traditional farms, is they'll just fill them with antibiotics, make sure they can never get sick, but that just keeps them unhealthy. And I do believe antibiotics are helpful when they're needed. Like you said, like if they get sick, then yes, you should give them to it, but it shouldn't be so overused and over prescribed, because it sounds like you try and keep your animals healthy. And I've known on my own health journey that the healthier I get, the less frequently I get sick. And like if I do get sick, I can do the same thing and say, why am I getting sick? Is there a deficiency somewhere? Like, why is my body not fighting it off as well as it should? So I completely agree with everything you said. And I love it. Regenerative agriculture sounds like it is a better way to do things. But I did want to backtrack on one thing you mentioned because you said you have the cows, pigs, and chickens, and you said how the chickens, they scatter the manure and eats the pests. But from what I know about pigs is that they tend to kind of like they rut up the ground. And how it how do you use that with the cows and the chickens? Because you said it works best with all three. Do you let the pigs like kind of like rut up the ground, destroy kind of like the grass for it to then grow more plentiful, or how does that work?
Yeah, actually, pigs are so exciting when it comes to farming. So how we use the pigs is they have their own section. Um, so the cows, okay, so the cows go through the pastures and the chickens follow directly. The pigs are in an area specifically, and they're also rotated. So that's how we control how much disturbance they do, is we move them through the pasture, but they're kind of in their own area. And then um, when the cows are done, like maybe in a next season, we'll have the pigs' new area that they'll rotate through in a new season in another spot. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So the pigs, they do a lot of disturbance, and sometimes it's a little bit scary to see just how much they've turned up the ground. And you don't want them to do it too much to where they ruin it. There's like a sweet spot, and it's just different than what the cows do, because when the cows eat the grass, um, when they eat it down so far, it actually encourages root growth, and that's how they help the grass come back. But what the pigs do is they are Earth's natural tillers. There is a time and place for tillage, just not by man, is what we believe. But those pigs come in and they root, and that rooting really gets oxygen into the ground, and they actually disturb old seed beds. So Joel Salatin will talk about how on his farm, they have found plant life that they thought was extinct like 1,000 years ago, that is now growing where his pigs have been, because those seed beds have been disturbed, and oxygen to them and the dirt loosened up to really get all of those nutrients in, and they start growing. So yeah, pigs are powerful. Like, you just have to watch them, but they it's just all a matter of watching the land, watching how it's responding to the animals, and how much disturbance has been done, and then moving the animals. Also, with pigs, you have a longer rest period. So, like with cattle, they're rotated through the pastures, and we generally shoot for like a minimum of 30 days rest, so 30 days before they come back to that spot. With pigs, you need a minimum of like 80 days rest for those, because there's so much disturbance done. So they're managed similarly, you just have longer rest periods in between.
That's fascinating. I didn't know. I'd never heard about uh pigs basically bringing back crops that like or plants that have been essentially classified as extinct.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
it is incredible. It's so much fun.
By any chance, have you come across any of those plants on your farm yet? That-
No. So we actually, and I don't know if you saw this in any of your reading about us, we live in Missouri right now. We've only been here about a year on this farm. We've been producing for 7 years, but we were in Colorado, and where we started. And so we moved here to Missouri, and so this farm is like a new experiment for us to apply these principles. The ground that we moved to hasn't had animals on it for 5 to 10 years. They just grew hay. But so it's going to be really fun to see what we get to create here and watch stuff grow and change.
Okay, so you took over what was previously just like a hay field, basically.
Mhm. Yeah.
How was that basically regenerating from monocrop to everything you have now? What was that process like?
Well, so it wasn't really, we're starting out in a good place. So monocrop, more like corn and soybean fields, that'll take a lot of work. Fortunately, we didn't have that much work ahead of us with it being hay. The beautiful thing about Missouri is there's a lot of water and grass just grows really easily. And so the guy who was farming it, he essentially just cut the grass every year. So there's part of our process, what we have ahead of us, because this was our first season here in Missouri, this last summer was. So this was really just us learning the seasons and how we manage our animals in those seasons. Missouri has a lot more water. Colorado is really dry. So management is going to be a little bit different. Because when it's really wet out there, you don't want the animals out there tearing stuff up too much. So I was learning that. And then learning the different species of grasses that are out here. For example, there is a grass called fescue that has certain, when it gets to a certain height, there is a certain fungus that can be toxic to the cows that actually travels up the stem of the grass. It's really interesting when you start getting into the science of grasses and how weather affects different levels in them. But our challenge so far has just been learning these grasses and how to manage them properly so that they're always in the best state for our animals, and bringing in more, increasing the diversity that's out there. More clovers. We want more legumes out there for them, and just how we're going to manage that. And we have more grass than we have animals to consume it, and so really getting being able to grow our herd so that we can actually manage the property properly. So we don't have the challenges as far as going from a dead field, like I would call a corn or a soybean field. It's it's just more learning how to manage what is here and improve it so that it's the best quality for the animals.
Yeah, I knew that there's different species of grasses, like because I just moved cross country and the grass here is definitely different than where I came from. And it is definitely something I'm aware of, but I've not really done any research into different kinds of grasses. And it's really interesting that like a certain species of grass will grow a fungus that could be deadly for an animal. And that's definitely something that you would have to be mindful of. On the opposite end, do you know, are there different like species of grasses or plants that say the cows would eat that could possibly down the road change their flavor profile? I only ask this because I'm aware of like there are those Italian pigs, I think they are, that they only feed acorns and the bacon comes out tasting like acorns. Is
Yeah,
that something that's done with like cows and what they eat?
yeah, absolutely. So that's when you get more, uh, not the grasses themselves so much, but when you get into other species of plant, like more of your, uh, I don't know, for lack of a better term, weeds.
Mhm.
Um, they're still good for them, but like there's one called ironweed that is known to give a pretty off flavor to the meat. Um, and then there are those that actually will sweeten the meat a little bit. So yeah, and especially a lot of that shows up in our dairy cow with our milk. If our cow gets into certain parts of the pastures, the milk will taste terrible. It's awful. You can taste those things coming through. Or if she gets too much garlic, that will definitely come through the milk.
Interesting.
And yeah, so yeah, food definitely affects the flavor, and the management affects the flavor as well.
I don't think there's a big market for garlicky milk, so that makes sense.
No.
All right. Yeah, that's fascinating. So besides like the beef, you said you have pigs. Do you do something similar to that? Do you supplement their foods with anything, or do you just is it all natural? Do they just eat the grass and what's there?
We do supplement pigs because they are omnivores, so they have additional protein requirements, and that's where like the nuts come in. Over in Italy and Spain, if you have forested property where there's an abundance of foods like that, then you can go without the grain. We don't have that, so we do supplement. We use a corn and soy free supplement for our pigs, and but they consume so much less of that when they're out in the field because they consume so much of the grass. I mean, we do have some treed areas that have acorns, and so when like this year when we put them in there, their feed consumption almost cut in half because they were just going after all those acorns. So we have them out in the fields, but we have that for them just to make sure that they are meeting their nutritional requirements that way.
All right, that's awesome. And yeah, adding the acorns reduces that, so I'm sure that that probably tastes fantastic,
Yeah.
especially growing it yourself.
Yes.
It's making me hungry just thinking about it.
Oh, yes.
So, have you ever? So you mentioned that it's corn and soy free. I appreciate that, but could you just explain why do you go corn and soy free for their supplements?
Well, that goes into the biggest reason would be polyunsaturated fats. When when animals eat the corn and soy, and even other grains, but those two more specifically, they actually produce more polyunsaturated fats in the fats in their muscle and the fats that we consume in their food when we eat the meat that they produce. And so it's to lessen that. Um, and the soy. The soy isoflavones or flavones, however you pronounce that, are actually detectable in chicken eggs and pig meat, separate from the pig and chicken proteins themselves. Like you can actually detect soy itself, and that still has an impact on your estrogenic levels. It's an endocrine disruptor, and that's a whole nother deep dive into all of the things that soy can do to the body. So we avoid that. People who have soy allergies are sensitive to foods that have soy, or animal foods that have been soy products. We used to sell at a farmer's market, and we had some customers who had soy allergies, and they're like, I can't eat meat that has been fed soy. At that time, we didn't have the option of corn and soy free, because it would have made everything so much, it would have made the food so expensive nobody could afford it. So we did the best we could with what we had, and we did a non-GMO roasted soybean, and that was better. But now that we're here in this part of the country, we have access to foods to be able to do that corn and soy free. So it's always been a goal, and it's to just continue to remove any of those inflammatory foods from people's diets, and what the animals would eat naturally or unnaturally.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I love nutrition. I love diving deep into all of that. And that is fascinating knowing that soy isoflavones can be found in like protein, which you feel like is almost kind of like separate from the animal, but it makes sense because it's still being developed by the animal.
Yeah. And the neat thing is that what is neat is you can have an animal that has been fed soy in its life, and you can remove the soy from their diet. So this was research paper that is on the Weston A. Price organization's website. They went into this, but essentially they removed the soy from the diet of these chickens, and a week later, the soy isoflavones could not be detected anymore. So, so that's just really neat. So, because part of the worry for me is like, well, in a chicken especially, or in a pig, if they've been fed soy and it's in their meat, like, will changing their diet be enough, or do I have to start with all new animals? And according to that research, that wasn't the case. So it's helpful for anyone who's out there who would like to move to that. You don't have to get rid of your animals, you can just change their diet, and it will have that same effect.
Yeah, that's good to know because I know that's also kind of a problem with humans. So we will ingest all these toxins like soy from grocery store meats, and it'll start to build up in ourselves. And I know that while we can build it up, eventually, if we cut that out of our diet, we will slowly remove those own toxins from our own body. So it's good to know like animals have that same basically bodily defense, so that way they can remove it and create a healthier animal. Because I believe eating healthy animals creates a healthy human.
It does. That's one of our, I haven't known what to call it. I was gonna call it the farmer's promise, or the, I don't know, haven't come up with a name, but essentially it just starts out with the word healthy. If you break it up, can also say heal thy. So heal thy soil, heal thy land, or healthy soil, healthy land. Okay. And it just goes healthy soil, healthy creates healthy land. Healthy land creates healthy pastures. Healthy pastures create healthy animals. Healthy animals create healthy meat. Healthy meat, or heal thy meat, heal thy self, heal thyself, heal thy family, heal thy family, heal thy community, heal thy community, heal thy world, or country, and then world. And that's where, for us, it really does start with the soil. The impact we want to have on the world starts with the soil, and it's just that domino effect all the way up and how it impacts everything else.
I like that. So you starting from the seed, you can heal the world essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was I think it was part of your mission statement, and it was creating a rugged individual. What exactly is how do you define a rugged individual?
A rugged individual is someone who keeps going no matter what is in front of them. Often when we think of rugged, we think of, maybe your Western cowboy or rugged mountains. They can be rough and gruff on the outside, but soft as butter on the inside. But that rugged, so we're a very patriotic family and company, and rugged individuals are who created our country. It is through their ruggedness, their determination, and resolve to have better, that developed the country into what it was then. And a rugged individual, in the sense of how that relates to our farm, is someone who is determined and resolved to have the best health, the best quality, to live their life's purpose, to have their own impact on the world, whether that is being the best mom you can be, or it doesn't have to do anything with fame. It's just being the very best version of yourself and not letting society dictate who you are. That you get to follow that call and accomplish your own individual mission.
I love that. Yeah, so when I first read it, I did also have that image spring to my mind of the Western cowboys, because that is what's when you think rugged, you think sitting by a campfire cowboy, or penning cows on horseback. But the fact that it makes so much sense now as well to incorporate more of like the modern person as to what they could be when it comes to being rugged. Because as much as I love farming, as much as I love regenerative agriculture, and your whole mission statement, it probably wouldn't make the most sense for every single person to be that one specific thing. But rugged, I think, is something that we could all strive for.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. So that clarifies a lot of what your mission statement is on and how you approach your whole farm, your family life. And speaking of that, because you did mention you have 6 kids and you homeschool all 6 of them, that has got to be a chore. How do you handle running a farm? I know you and your husband are partners, but like you help run a farm and you manage to teach 6 children, and you said use your farm as a curriculum. Could you explain a little bit more on that exactly?
Yeah. So this goes back to the rugged individual, the person who is determined, right? um, you know, Homeschooling is not what a lot of people think it is. It's not school at home. What we do with our children is, we call it leadership education. We are about, and that's that rugged individual, true leaders and leadership. So Our farm is curriculum because of the type of people that it will create our children to be. Our children have a very visceral connection to reality, the connection of life and death, cause and effect, what it is to work hard. And it's not that people can't do that without a farm. That's not what I'm saying at all. You can teach your children to work hard without a farm, but this is what it does for our children. My life book is Farmer Boy, and that is a book in the series of the Little House on the Prairie series by Laura Ingalls. And if you've never read any of those books, I strongly encourage you to read them. But in Farmer Boy, the main character is Almanzo, and he's a 10-year-old boy, and he loves horses. And his dad, towards the end of the book, has this conversation with Almanzo, where Almanzo has this opportunity to go and apprentice for someone else. And his dad is explaining to him, well, you can go and you can do that, and you will learn great and wonderful things, but you will also be at his beck and call. You will be at your customer's beck and call for everything. You will be indoors most of the time, building these wagons, building these buggies. Your life will be determined by somebody else. And he says, but if you are a farmer, you make the clothes you wear, you grow the food you eat, you live your life on your terms, and you are beholden to nobody. It's a lot of hard work. It may not pay as much as some of these other jobs, but you are free. And that is what we want to give to our children. And that is what we feel like we give our children through our farm. It's learning those leadership and entrepreneurial skills, and that they are out doing the chores. They're learning the things right alongside us. Our 16-year-old son, he's been managing our cows all summer long. He builds the paddocks, he moves them, he communicates with his dad about, what their supplements are, or this isn't working or whatever, and they do that together. We don't follow book curriculum. In the wintertime is our reading time, where we're a reading family. We read lots of things, classics and classic literature, and diving into our own interests, but it's all to give them experience to grow and develop character, so that they too will find their own purpose and mission in life, and to fulfill that. So our education, that kind of went maybe not in the direction you were quite asking, but so what does it look like for me to homeschool them? It's child-led. They determine what they want to learn. I am here as a mentor. I guide them, I direct them, and I provide resources, but their education is on them, what they learn, how they develop. And to some, that sounds like maybe I don't do much, but I can tell you one of our foundations is to inspire, not require. And that is hard work, to inspire somebody to want to be better versus requiring them to do these things. Inspiration is hard work. But that's what we do. And all of our children, they, when they hit a certain age, they, 11, 10, 11, like they want to read all day long, and mom is interrupting them if she's telling them to, go do something, because they just want to dive in and read and study. Our oldest is 18, and she's going to farm. She is going to grow the sheep side of our business, and she is going to do dairy, and she's very, she's building these things. She was going to go to college to be a vet, and she was just like, I can't do that. This is what I'm called to. And so she's diving in and fulfilling that. And so it's actually not as hard. Well, the inspiration is hard, but we all manage ourselves. And so the other side of it is me focusing on what I'm passionate about. My children will do what I do, not what I say. So if I'm telling them, find your passion, if I'm telling them, read your book, but I'm not reading and I'm not following my passion, they're not going to do it. So I focus on the things that bring me joy, that inspire me, that they see me working really hard and going through the struggles of what it is to be a business owner and a farmer, and it inspires them to go after what they want to. Hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. I love that. I could probably go on for hours just ranting about how much I do not like our current educational system. And it sounds like what you're doing for your kids is so much, I can't really say better, but I do believe it sounds better to me. You're teaching them to be independent individuals that take life for themselves and not just do what other people tell them to do, not sit in a desk all day just listening to someone explain theoreticals and nonsense that's never going to contribute to anything meaningful in their life, but it's just going to teach them to sit there and do as they're told. Whereas you are teaching them to be their own person. And we need more of that. Yes, rugged individuals.
And that, humans naturally love to learn and want to learn. I see all the books on your shelf. When we have something we're passionate about, we dive into it and we learn it. If we have to know something, we will learn it. And that's, I don't rely on anything I learned in school.
I can't remember the last time I had to know a squared plus b squared equals c squared ever in my life.
But what I do need to know, I learn it and I go after it. And so that's what I teach my kids to do. So, and that's what they do, and they'll be successful. And they'll learn whatever they need to learn. If they do end up needing to know algebra, they'll learn it, but because they're passionate about it and they understand how it applies in their life.
Yeah. So, and I completely agree. School, I think, has this problem where they indoctrinate these kids to almost hate learning. I was one of those kids. I hated going to school. I hated learning. I hated sitting still for hours every day. And then out of school, I was like, I don't need to learn anything else. I'm just going to do these dead end jobs. And then I picked up a few books. I listened to some podcasts. I was like, oh, I enjoy this. And then it just spirals. Like, I enjoy learning about these specific topics. And it sounds like what took me until my late 20s to understand about learning, it's like you're instilling in your children at a young age. So they're going to be so far ahead of the game when it comes to learning and educating themselves and taking their lives into their own hands. So that is fantastic.
Thank you.
All right. And I did have a couple more questions just off that topic. But again, I love the homeschooling aspect of it. Something else you mentioned earlier, you're on a farm, you're on a rancher, you used to be vegan. and now you don't eat vegetables. If I understood what you said earlier correctly. Could you explain that a little bit more?
Yes. So I had a lot of health issues. Like I said, the modern medicine, I went to doctors and they told me they didn't know what was wrong with me and they sent me home. And I had a period of 4 months where I didn't eat. I couldn't eat. Everything threw up. It wouldn't, nothing digested. I was in a lot of pain. I remember one time specifically, I took some Tylenol to try and help with the pain. I threw up 6 hours later, a whole Tylenol pill. It didn't break down at all. And I was introduced to an herbalist and she put me on a 2-week herbal cleanse and I could eat again. And so that changed my life. So I dove into herbalism and that particular route took me plant-based, where meat was bad and all of these things. And so I did that for almost, like I said, 15 years. But my health kept slowly going downhill. And I thought that it was because I wasn't strict enough. I wasn't, sticking to the right diet well enough. And I just thought it was me essentially telling myself I'm not good enough, right? At doing this. And I kept having these different bad experiences. I was in bed a lot when my kids were younger and especially during pregnancy and nursing. I just almost didn't exist, is what I felt like anyway. But it came to this point where I was like, okay, I am all in. I am not, I want to be healthy. So I dove into a vegan, saltless diet, like no salt, because you can get all your minerals from food, from the vegetables, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I dove in all in, and it was my wedding anniversary, and my husband and we went out to eat, and I got sick. I assumed that it started out as food poisoning because those were the symptoms I had out both ends but it lasted a whole week. Could not get it in control, could not eat anything, could not keep anything down. And my husband's like, I'm going to take you to the doctor. I was like, no. I just need to, take these herbs and just need to I just need these things to get myself in balance. And he's like, this has gone on long enough. Well, he took me into the hospital and I was in the hospital for 3 days. I had developed what was called an ileus, and that is essentially where your intestines start to shut down. They go to sleep, they stop functioning. And the doctor told my husband, if you hadn't brought her in today, you probably would have been having a funeral next week. I had 5 children at that time, and it just hit me so hard that my desire to be healthy almost made me leave my children and husband motherless and wifeless. And it made me angry, and I was like, I am done trying to be healthy. I'm just going to eat. I don't care anymore. This is stupid. I'm going to feel like crap anyway, so I might as well just eat. And so I added meat back to my diet, and this was when we had started producing our own. We had just started producing our own. Started with pigs, and I added meat back to my diet. And then when we added our beef back into my diet, my health did a complete 180. I had the most vibrant health that I had in. This started. So I was divorced and married the husband I currently am. So I had issues being sick in my previous marriage. But so I had the most vibrant health I had in like 10 years or well beyond that. I don't even know anymore the timeline. And I had more energy, more clarity of mind, all of it from adding meat back to my diet. And that was what made me go, okay, there is something to this. All of the stuff that I read about how meat is bad for the body, that's a lie, because here I am. That is what I changed, and I am better. And that's what started me down the road. Then I was introduced to like the Weston A. Price Foundation and the Wise Traditions diet, and then from there, carnivore and animal based. And in that 15 years of being plant based, I had a green smoothie every day for 15 years. That's what was my breakfast, like 4 handfuls of spinach, the almond milk, the everything. And I had a rough go in the beginning when I was starting to go more carnivore, and that was oxalate dumping. And so I'm animal. This has been a process dealing with the oxalates, but yeah, so that's what got me from there to here. The vegetables are out. I will eat some fruit, but mostly meat and then a raw dairy. So.
I'm jealous of raw dairy. Just moved and it's difficult to find raw dairy. So I'm a little jealous of that. That's my favorite.
What state are you in?
Texas.
Okay. Have you ever been to the realmilk.com website? Okay.
Texas has it. It's just
hard to get.
Yes, it's not exactly close by any standards to where I'm at now. But yes, I'm aware of that site. I love that site. It's how I used to find the milk, and now it's like the only thing local is like $15 a gallon. I'm like, I don't want to spend that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is fantastic. Could I ask, what kind of fruits do you typically eat when you do eat
them? Apples are probably the thing that I do the most. And that's most of what we purchase because we raise our own meat and the dairy. And so then fruit is the majority of what I purchase at the store, and I buy through Azure Standard, so I can get 40 pounds of organic apples for a really decent price. So apples are the main thing. And then I'll have some berries like strawberries, maybe some oranges, but yeah, it's not a large variety of fruit, and then squashes, we grow squashes, but I guess I eat some vegetables because I'll still include some garlic every now and then and some onions every now and then, but yeah.
Is garlic a vegetable? I never really thought about that. It's more, I always consider it more like a potato almost, and it's like, it's its own class, whatever. It tastes good. Yeah. I've never had an issue with garlic. I'm just like, I don't want to cut this out.
Yeah, no. If I don't have, and every now and then I'll have tomatoes. I mean, they're technically a fruit, so I still have tomatoes sometimes, but yeah, I just don't have a lot very often. I only have it, and I will have I drink like the Element, the chocolate packets. I'll have that sometimes too, but really that's to keep a certain amount of oxalate in my diet. Because if I go full carnivore, then there's no oxalate in my diet, and that's when the oxalate dumping can get out of control. So I just eat those foods mostly to keep oxalate levels manageable.
Kind of on that topic again, I love everything. I think we talked in an animal-based group. I'm a big fan of the diet itself. It turned my health around as well. Do you ever add apple cider vinegar to anything that you're cooking?
Yes. So apple cider vinegar and I have a funny relationship because when I was pregnant with my last child, I had a kidney stone, and I chugged apple cider vinegar, like, put it in. I would just drink it anytime I had any pain from the kidney stone. So I actually cannot stomach the smell of apple cider vinegar anymore. I get so nauseated. So I actually take apple cider vinegar capsules.
Mhm.
We'll put it in like our broths that we make a little bit, but I can only put a small amount. If I smell it, I'm like, oh. But anyway, so I use the apple cider vinegar pills for myself. We use it for the animals though. All of our animals get apple cider vinegar.
Yeah, I love it, especially because I know about the effects of oxalates and building up of kidney stones, and the acetic acid in apple cider vinegar can help break it down. But a trick I learned was I add a little bit of apple cider vinegar to the meat that I'm cooking, like if I'm making ground. It helps with digestion almost, and after you cook it off, you don't smell it at all either. And I think
Yeah.
that's a nice little tang to it.
Hmm.
And one more thing, because I was again going through your Instagram, going through your website, and we mentioned nutrition a few times. Do you have any favorite recipes you like for, including in the animal-based diet?
Um, Homemade mayonnaise is my favorite, and it's super simple to make. It's just you can use lard or coconut oil or olive oil. I tend to not use a lot of olive oil. We stick to like lard and tallow and coconut oil. But you melt that and you have your egg and you blend it. I have a recipe that I've sent out to my email list. I only send recipes to my email list, so if anybody wants my recipes, you have to be on my email. But yeah, mayonnaise and I just and broth, like that's our big thing. Um, Yogurt is really simple to make. But I can't like claim it as a recipe because it's just the starter. But gosh, I'm trying to think. Oh, animal based pizza. That is the best.
Interesting. Tell me more about this.
Okay, so it's hamburger crust. You do a pound of hamburger. You will mix. You cook the hamburger first and drain off some of the fat just so that it makes a crispier crust. And then you will blend in some raw cheese and an egg. And some people put pork rinds. I do sometimes I don't. You blend that all up with the cooked meat, and then you spread it out on a pan, and then you bake it. I've done it under just like the broiler, and then you flip it over and it gets nice and crispy. And then you can do a tomato sauce if you allow tomatoes, or you don't have to do a sauce, and then you just do cheese on the top. I am a pineapple pizza person, so we do lots of pineapple and your pepperoni and other meats, and it is so good. It is the best.
Talking about animals really made me hungry, but that sounds fantastic.
Oh yeah. So when you're craving, like I call it dirty food, like oh I'm just craving some dirty food, that pizza always hits the spot, and then you feel you ate something very deeply nourishing for your body, but it satisfied that dirty food craving.
So it's basically a ground beef crust.
Mm-hmm.
I've never thought about that, but I mean, it kind of makes sense. It's like similar to like a burger will keep its shape. That is.
Some people use chicken. I actually don't like chicken as much. I love beef, so we do beef crust. But yeah, some people do chicken. You can find that recipe in like keto world, or I think that's where I found it, is just some keto recipes. But a keto cheesecake, those are fantastic as well.
I know I just came across one of those recipes and I'm like, I need to make this soon.
Yes, so good.
All right. Well, I will put all of your information and how to reach people in the show notes, but do you just want to say one more time, like how they can find you, where they can read more about your farm?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is 1984farms.com, and you can pretty much find everything from there. We're also on social media, mostly Facebook and Instagram, just at 1984farms. And you are welcome to email me with questions. My email address is info@1984farms.com. And yeah, that's pretty much where you can find us.
Awesome. Well, this has been a ton of fun. I learned so much today on regenerative farming. I appreciate you taking the time to have this interview with me and talk to me about your farm and all the amazing stuff you're doing. I can't wait to, I'm probably gonna end up ordering some of your meat myself because it sounds delicious, especially the way you grow your food. And I know that I'm sure it carries over that if it's grown with love, it tastes a little bit better, just like homemade food.
I think so.
Anyway, thank you so much for your time today, Kerissa.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Drake. We really appreciate it.
Of course. And we will be in touch soon.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I'll see you.